On the topic of transcending facts and revealing truth, let us contemplate the wisdom of three giants in New Thought. Ernest Holmes wrote, "The measure of our faith in the infinite is the measure of our capacity to draw from the infinite." Thomas Trord in Edinburgh Lectures, page 34, wrote, "Our thought of anything forms a spiritual prototype of it, thus constituting a nucleus or center of attraction for all conditions necessary to it eventually manifesting." Emma Curtis Hopkins in Scientific Christian Manual Mental Practice, page 241, wrote, "You will feel less spiritual inspiration when you are mourning, whining, and complaining." Okay, I'll tell you that again. You will feel less spiritual inspiration when you are mourning, whining, and complaining. But when you praise and describe the good, you feel full of spiritual fervor. Describing our good will bring it to our sight. Join me in speaking our intention for the month. Today I create a new reality. I listen within for the newly emergent vision. Pulled by a vision of possibilities, I choose words, thoughts, and actions that speak the truth of its vision for my life and for the planet.
So this month's focus has been on the idea of being pulled by possibilities and the awareness that within us is an urge to grow, to expand, and to unfold. The spiral of conscious evolution is what it's been called. And here's the thing, is that when we are unaware of that, and we have a conditioned mind that tends to resist that, so there's like this little push and pull that's going on inside of us. When we don't understand this about the conditioned mind, then what happens is the universe is perfectly designed, right? So what that means is that there tends to be a crisis. We sort of create a crisis in our lives unconsciously to help us to transcend that and then to grow and to expand and to unfold inside within us more fully. That happens on the personal level, and that happens on the global level. And so this entire month, we are focusing on the spiritual laws that we can use to allow ourselves to be pulled by the vision instead of having to be pushed by all of the crises, the pain of the crises that happen in our lives. So as we become more conscious and we use these principles, wow, it's just so much more fun. So that's the whole idea. And the first week we talked about making direct contact with the divine through meditation. And then last week we talked about the sequence of creation, how we participate in the creation of our own lives and in what's going on the planet through the use of our word, our thought that is acted upon by universal law and becomes the experience and the form that's in our lives. And today the focus is going to be on transcending facts by focusing on truth, by actually revealing that truth in our lives. And I want to start first with Emma Curtis Hopkins, which was the very last person that was quoted by Marcy, because she was an amazing woman. She lived she was born like sometime in the 1800s, and she was really one of the main teachers for all of the New Thought communities that popped up. The Unity, people who started Unity, the Fillmores, Ernest Holmes, who started the Science of Mind, religious science movement, the Melinda Kramer, who started the divine science, and so on and so forth. She was a major player in the New Thought movement, highly respected, a deep mystic, and an author. And she got it, didn't she, when she talked about complaining and mourning, blah, 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 blah. Is if you want to be miserable, that's the way to go. And if you want to keep creating more of what you don't want. But then she talked about praising and describing our visions, right? The good that we choose to create as a way to create it. And one of the things that she said that was so powerful is that, when we think we want a car, or we think we want a relationship, or we want a new job, all of those things, she says, the good that you are seeking, all of those things, is really God. We think we want all of those things, and it doesn't mean that it's not good to have them, because it's part of being on the planet. But when we get caught up in thinking that next thing that I'm going to manifest is going to make me happy, we end up feeling empty and frustrated, and not only that, but really caught up in craving more and more and more and more and more, and never feeling satisfied. So her very simple statement, the good that we are seeking is our God. And where is that presence? We find that presence within us. And that's why the spiritual practices that we encourage, turning within, meditating, speaking our truth, speaking the truth, is so key to this whole thing. So yes, so this is about moving up the levels of conscious evolution. We start off by the complaining and whining, right? That's the victim stage. And then we learn how to use the law, and we start manifesting things. And that's really cool. It's all part of the process. However, if we get caught up in the manifestation and miss the point that what we really deeply desire is that connection and experience with the infinite, the divine, that we find by turning within, sitting in the silence, then we miss the point. We miss the point, and we end up, like I said, feeling empty and frustrated and unsatisfied. So, yay, Emma. So again, the thing to think of is when say you want to manifest a car or a relationship, the question to ask yourself is, what is the quality or qualities of the divine that I'm choosing to experience here? So if it's a car, okay, maybe it's a greater sense of freedom, or abundance, or it might be power, it might, any of those things, those are all qualities of the divine. And so we want to make sure we include that in our prayer work, those qualities that we choose to make manifest. So let's get back to this idea of focusing on truth instead of the facts. New Thought began back in the mid 1850s with a man by the name of Phineas Parkhurst Quimby. And it's so amazing, a lot of people have not heard of him, this man. And yet he had some major breakthroughs, and there were thousands of people that came to him with physical ailments that were healed because of his discovery. Through his experience with mesmerism, which is hypnotism, back in the day, he discovered this. He suddenly began to understand the subconscious mind and how it works. And he began to see that people who came to him that had physical ailments all had very similar beliefs. They believed in very scary things. They believed in the devil. They believed in hell. They believed in sin, and every little thing that they did that they thought was a sin, thought they were going to be punished for. So that outpictured as physical ailments of all kinds. So what did he do? he began to work with them to teach them the higher spiritual truth that God is all there is, God is perfect, God is love, God is infinite wisdom, God is for us. It is, it's this divine presence, this universal presence wants the very highest and best for us. And just as it is perfect, whole, and complete, so are we. That's our nature. And so he began to dispel through verbal argument, mental argument, for the truth, arguing for the truth, and breaking down the barriers of the old beliefs, and focusing on the spiritual perfection of his clients. What he talked about the Christ nature, the divine nature of them. They healed. They healed. So this is a really important thing to get, is when we look past the facts and focus on the greater truth. That's when we reveal the good that we desire, whether it's a physical healing, whether it's more abundance, the car, the relationship, the job, all of those things. It always begins with that greater realization of the infinite and the perfection that's already within us, already within all of those around us. Focusing on truth instead of facts. I just recently received a book, actually, from my daughter Michelle, that's called The Magic Mala. And the story in it so beautifully illustrates a lot of these spiritual principles. So one of them is, before I do that, I have another thing I want to share with you. Let's do this first. Ernest Holmes, in his biography, that's called Ernest Holmes, His Life and Times, there's a story in it that's told by his brother Fenwick Holmes about when they were younger. And they had quite a mother, let me tell you, Mrs. Holmes. She did not buy into exposing her children to fear teachings. So she taught them love and she taught them possibility. She gave them mental equivalents. We call them mental equivalents or spiritual prototypes of higher truth. And what Fenwick said is that they also had no idea that they were, in those days, what would be considered poor, because she gave them the mental equivalent and the experience of abundance and freedom. What did she do? She took them to parks, all the things that were free, took them to parks and let them play. They would discover all different kinds of things that were in the different places where they lived. She took them to the library. And I think about Ernest Holmes and how young he was when he read Emerson and some of these other great minds. She exposed him to libraries and the rest of the family. And Fenwick said, we had the experience of being free and abundant. So that's what we knew. We felt that we were free and abundant. So again, focusing on truth instead of the facts. So important. So how do we get to that place of truth when the facts are staring us in the face? Those facts that look like limitation and lack and those other kinds of things. There are some wonderful spiritual practices, and I talked about them a couple weeks ago, this particular one, and we've talked about it many times before, but it's so important. It's called repetition. Repetition. So when we begin to discover what it is that we choose to experience in our lives, we want to repeat that truth and the quality of God that we've discovered that we want to bring forth, and the truth. So a really good example in the book called Feel Free to Prosper that Marilyn Janae wrote, there is a practice in there of focusing on some qualities, particular qualities, to experience more abundance in our lives. And it's just a mantra of just the qualities. and I did get permission from her to share this. So it's success and wealth, success and wealth, success and wealth. And to repeat that over and over, particularly when we notice our minds going in the direction of noticing the lack, noticing the facts, right? Just repeating those qualities over and over. So in the book The Magic Mala by Bob Olson, the main character, whose name is Robbie, who's an aspiring young artist and actually young writer, finds a set of mala beads in the attic when he is searching around trying to find something he can sell to pay his rent. And so he finds these mala beads and he finds the instructions for them. And keep in mind that he is a very fact-oriented person. You know, he's like, prove it to me with the facts. And he's caught up in this mental loop of lack and limitation, noticing all the things that are wrong. And so now he finds these mala beads, which used to belong to his father, who turns out is a metaphysician and has taught metaphysics for quite a long time, but his son was never open to it. So he reads the instructions. The instructions teach him how to do an abundance mantra. And so he figures, what do I have to lose? And he begins to, twice a day, do this abundance mantra using the beads, you know, one by one. That's 108 times, twice a day. Not realizing that what he was doing is he was creating new circuitry in his neurobiology, right? Using the universal law to create abundance. And so all of these little abundance things start showing up. And actually, a pretty big one, a $5,000 check that arrived from a previous client who wanted to share some of the wealth that he'd received. He was a ghostwriter at the time, wanting to write his own. Now, this is fiction, by the way, but it teaches the principles so beautifully. And so here's the thing: is that even with that $5,000, and his wife also brought another $1,500 in, you know, and they have this rent, they get evicted. But so what happens to him? He goes right into fear and doubt again, even with all that's manifested. Why? Because he still has not grasped how the creative process works, nor what his true source is, which is the divine, the all-providing nature of the divine. And this often happens with people who start off learning these principles, start having manifestations, but then slip into fear and doubt. It's because those hidden beliefs, which is the next thing I'm going to talk about, those hidden beliefs that are buried in the subconscious mind are coming up to be healed. That's why it's really important that we understand this and we start pouring in this beautiful, good, clear water in the muddy water of our subconscious mind. All of that stuff comes up to be healed, the hidden beliefs. So what happens in this story of Robbie is that these hidden beliefs, because he doesn't quite understand how it all works, lead to some really fearful feelings and to a lot of self-sabotage. He starts complaining, he starts whining, he starts moaning, all the things that Emma talked about. And so what happens? He starts attracting all kinds of mishaps and uncomfortable things in his life. One of the things that happened is all of a sudden one of his previous clients who had died, and he had done some work. He'd received an advance. It was a ghostwriter job, and they had done a lot of work, so they'd actually used up the advance money. But the deceased widow decides to sue him if he doesn't return all the money. And of course, you know, he freaks out. And even, you know, gets more freaked out and starts, what does he do? He starts watching the news. And so one of his friends comes in and catches him. This is a friend who's really into metaphysics named Matt, comes in, catches him watching the news, and what are you doing? And so then it begins to unravel, and he learns the principle of how negative thoughts attract more negative thoughts and attract us to do things that even keep us caught in that spiral. And how watching the news all the time just simply adds to that negative spiral. So then he breaks his patterns. The bottom line, though, is what he learns. He learns about hidden beliefs. He learns about how to transform them by continually returning to the truth, to the higher truth. And when he does his mala beads, okay, so here's the next thing, which is about writing the vision. His father teaches him how to write out his vision in detail, but then when he's doing his mantra, to use one word, one quality of God that he focuses on that represents that vision. Because, trying to repeat your vision over and over 108 times, if it's really long, that's a challenge. So it's like focus, again, it goes back to focusing on the quality, abundance in this particular case. There's a beautiful biblical quote that goes like this: write the vision, make it plain upon the tablets, so that he that sees the tablets runs with it. I love this. This is in the Bible. And it will surely come to pass. That's in Habakkuk chapter 3, verse 2. I hadn't heard that one before, but isn't that great? Write the vision, make it plain upon the tablets. Well, we have paper nowadays. Make it plain upon the tablets or computers. And so that he that sees the tablets runs with it, and it will surely come to pass. So again, Robbie was encouraged by his father to write it down, So it's important that we not just keep them in our heads, but we write our visions down, and we find a quality or a couple qualities that represent them, and that's where our mantra is. And those, and I use mala beads. They are really powerful for helping me to stay focused. It's a great tool for rewiring the brain and the subconscious mind. So our Centers for Spiritual Living Delaware, Centers for Spiritual Living communities, all of the Centers for Spiritual Living all over the world, have a common written vision. And it's summarized, or it ends with, we are here to co-create a world that works for everyone. Isn't that beautiful? We're here to co-create a world that works for everyone. So CSL Delaware also, we have a written vision. We actually have a longer written vision that we haven't brought out recently, and I'm not going to go over it today. But with our current intention, we have summarized that down to, we are here to be the presence of love, co-creating heaven on earth. I've been using that as my mantra recently as I've been doing my beads. And it's really powerful, and a lot of really cool things have come to light with that. And of course, the quality of God is love there. And have you noticed in the news some interesting things going on? How about the wedding of Harry and Meghan, right? What is the quality of God that's being represented there? Love. Isn't that awesome? Our vision is unfolding on the world scene. How about that? And the two of them, what do? The two of them work together to make the world a better place in Africa. I know that's one of their projects that they do. They are into making the world a better place. Two of the things that I just talked about. And that's just one example of the good that's unfolding on the planet. The thing is, though, is this caught so much attention of people all over the planet. And again, these things that happen on the world stage that demonstrate the good that's unfolding have an impact on the subconscious mind of all of those who participate and even just witness it and watch it. That quality of love is unfolding. I claim it. I know it to be so. Yes? Yes. And then here's another cool thing is Centers for Spiritual Living offered the ministers and practitioners this wonderful, this happened just this past week, workshop or seminar by Reverend Michelle Senegal, who is an expert in the field of diversity and inclusion. And I sat in on that. And immediately I asked her, could you attend our Spark gathering that's coming up this Sunday? I said, you can do it by Zoom. I said, that's great, but could you do that? And she looked at her schedule and she said, yes, I actually have an opening. I can do that. So she's down in the Washington, Baltimore area, and she said yes. And so what is that all about? Transforming unconscious bias. It's another opportunity for us to bring up the hidden belief structures that block us from loving people and accepting and including people who we might perceive as different from us. It's another opportunity to bring that to the surface, let it go, transform it, and open our arms to more and more people, not only in our daily lives, but in the spiritual community. And I love that. I love the way Spirit works. So I just give my thanks for that. Let's turn within in prayer. Just knowing that in this moment, right here and right now, the fullness of God is present. That life that is all love, all peace, all joy, in infinite supply, all good. And that life is my life, that life is the life of each one of us. Each one of us, the whole, perfect, complete life of the divine individualized. And how I thrill in knowing that that divine presence as love, as all the good that it is showing up in our lives moment by moment and day by day, individually and as a community and as a world. And I delight in witnessing that unfoldment. I delight in participating any way that I can in that unfoldment of the divine, of revealing of the divine. And so I know that right here and right now, each one of us has the power to look beyond the facts and to be the revealers of truth, be the revealers of love, be the revealers of peace, be the revealers of joy, be the revealers of abundant supply, be the revealers of the divine in each and every way imaginable. I claim this truth about each one of us. I know that our lives are an absolute blessing to the planet. We are a beneficial presence. We are the presence of love, co-creating heaven on earth. And for this, I give my thanks. I release this word into the universal law of mind, and I invite us all to say together, yes, and so it is. All right.